This criminal booked the car in which he carried his victim away in his real name and with his own bank card. Every crim knows that you don't do that. More surprisingly, the man who, on the 3rd of March 2021, kidnapped, violated and then did away with 33-year-old marketing executive Sarah Everard using the COVID lockdown as a ruse to get her into his hired car wasn't just any old crim. A married man with 2 small children, 48-year-old Wayne Couzens was a serving police officer. Do subscribe, give the video a like, drop a comment and donate. Hit the thanks button below, I'll appreciate you. When Sarah Everard went missing, we were on our 3rd COVID lockdown, the pandemic having struck exactly a year before. After visiting a friend in Clapham Junction, South London, on the evening of the 3rd of March 2021, Sarah spent about 15 minutes on the phone to her boyfriend on her walk home. About halfway through her journey to Brixton Hill, where she lived, she learned that she was in breach of lockdown rules, was now under arrest, and would immediately be taken to the police station just like any other criminal suspect. Sarah's phone call with her boyfriend, which ended at 9:28 p.m. on that night, was the last time that any of Sarah's friends or family was ever able to contact Sarah. The dashcam footage from a bus and from at least one private vehicle capturing the moment when Wayne Couzens, an officer from the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command of the Metropolitan Police, arrested Sarah on the South Circular Road is, of course, what rapidly led police to their colleague's doorstep. I don't know where Couzens' wife and children were on the evening of the 9th of March 2021 when the police called in on Couzens at his home. In any event, the 3 officers who turned up knew that if Sarah was still alive, there wasn't a minute to be lost in trying to find her. For this reason, after arresting Couzens on suspicion of kidnap and then cuffing him, they interrogated him in his own front room. Taking the suspect straight to the police station for questioning would have wasted important time. Well, this is how the situation looked to the police at that point. They subjected Couzens to what's known under PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, as an urgent interview, and in the course of their interrogation, you'll actually hear them reference that.
So we're here to talk to you about Sarah. I'm going to show you a picture. Do you know Sarah?
I don't know.
Okay. Sarah went missing. I'll show you some pictures of her on the day.
Okay.
Sarah went missing on Wednesday, and her parents obviously and her family are really worried about her now. The inquiry that's been conducted so far has led us to come and speak to you about it and to see what you know about Sarah, okay? So, would you like to, do you know where Sarah is?
No.
The first point to note about Couzens' responses is his markedly weak and muted voice, which makes him sound diffident and nervous. One would expect a police officer to speak much more loudly and with much more confidence, just like the man's colleague is doing. But then we already know why this police officer is so obviously scared.
Right, okay. Do you know anything about what happened to her?
I know that she went missing up in London somewhere, about a week ago or so, just from what I've got on the news.
Okay. Have you ever personally met her?
No, not personally, no.
When Couzens said no when the officers asked him if he knew Sarah, this being, as you saw, their first question to him, he was, in principle, telling the truth. The reason he gave that one honest answer of his in the same feeble and quiet voice that he's using to tell the lies that we've just heard is quite obvious, I think. When someone is completely innocent of a crime, their answers will tend to be emphatic and confident, and, in line with that, a lot louder. They might even sound angry about being questioned over something in which they have played no part whatsoever.
Have you had any interactions with her at all?
No, why would I have personal interactions with her?
As a police officer, Couzens knows that a criminal suspect is meant to be answering questions from the police, not asking them. In such situations, the party or parties asking the questions are, of course, the ones in control. Couzens is actually attempting to win some authority and some respect here, even though he knows that he will fail. But then the man has a second motive for asking those questioning him a question of his own, delaying the inevitable, putting off the pain of being identified as an MURDERER for as long as possible.
Well, it's very difficult because I can't go into a lot of the evidence, because obviously that would require, that's not part of what an urgent interview is. Okay, this interview is just about trying to find her, because
Sure.
she's been missing for a while
I'm,
now.
I'm sat in handcuffs and with what I know her, so you must have something to say that I know her.
Couzens is, again, playing a losing game, and he knows it. He obviously wants to know what his colleagues know so that he can quickly prepare what he hopes will come across as innocent explanations for the evidence against him. This is a drowning man clutching at, well, nothing. There is in fact no straw for the man to grasp for, since there is no way that his colleagues will tell him what they know.
You've been arrested on suspicion of kidnap, and we believe that you've been involved in her disappearance and taking her away from her family.
Okay.
So we are trying to find her. Obviously everybody is very worried about her. She's got, parents, she's got she's siblings, she's got a boyfriend. There's a lot of people that care about her.
Sure.
You've seen her on the news, the number of people that, are reaching out about her.
Sure.
Out there looking for her every day. And she's missing. And our job, our primary job here is to find her. And to try and find her safe and well.
Okay.
No, all that nodding. Couzens has no choice, or feels he has no choice, other than to express understanding for his colleague's mission to find Sarah. Anything less would, of course, be highly suspicious of him. His colleagues here are reattempting to humanise Sarah to the suspect, their first attempt having come at the very beginning when they showed the suspect 2 pictures of Sarah in quick succession, while stressing the immense worry that her disappearance was causing her loved ones. Couzens' demonstration of his understanding of the consequences of Sarah's disappearance, as we know, is just an act. He couldn't give a fuck about the impact of Sarah's disappearance on her family any more than he gave a fuck about Sarah herself. Now, prepare yourself for the preposterous bullshit that the suspect is about to spout in explanation of his part in Sarah's disappearance.
Now, we believe that you know something about where she is, and that's why we're here, to look for her and to try and find her. And that's why we're talking to you now, is to try and get you to have a good think about it and tell us anything you can about whether we might be able to find her.
Okay. Well, I am in financial, and I've been lent on by I don't know who they are. They're a group, a gang, whatever, and they told me, right, I need to go and pick up girls and give them to them. So I said, not happening, and it then came through that they're gonna harm my family, take them away, and they'll use them instead. At that point I had no option to try and find somebody. So I don't, there's a couple of names. I was told a place to take her. That's it. That is all I know. And to this group of people.
Tell me about them. I need to find them. Tell me everything you know that I
Okay.
hope that you'll help me.
There was a white Sprinter van. They it was between sort of Len and Maidstone area that I dropped her off. I still don't know. I don't know. They just I just parked my car up, and then the van come up behind me, flashed me. They all jumped out, and then they took this girl. They said, you've done good, and
that slow, hesitant speech, a lot like the speech of a small child, arguably. The lack of tone variation, the lack of conviction to his words, the constant lack of eye contact with his interlocutor, the story itself. You don't get those things from someone who's telling the truth. The slowness with which the suspect speaks is, of course, to give himself time to think of what to say and to memorise what he's saying in case he's asked about it again. By using the notably casual expression of picking up girls to represent the act of kidnap, Couzens is able to distance himself from the horrendous reality of his act. While this makes it a lot easier for Couzens to relate his offence to his colleagues, it is, naturally, highly disrespectful to his victim. It makes it seem as if Sarah was literally just a necessary transaction, not an actual human being. The term girls, in fact, the most offensive element of the reference to picking up girls, allows Couzens to distance himself specifically from his victim herself. He only ever alludes to Sarah, in fact, as the girl. Never once does he mention her by name. I've already shown that the suspects didn't give a shit about the worry and upset of Sarah's family and friends, any more than he gave a shit about the shock, fear and suffering that he caused to Sarah during the 3 to 4 hours, say, that he held her prisoner. The disrespectful attitude that he's showing his victim now, then, should come as no surprise. The man has zero remorse. A gang who accepts payment in girls instead of in cash. I think any gang who was owed money by someone who wasn't paying up would just unalive the person. Of course, Couzens happened to have got himself into a shit ton of debt with a very unusual gang.
I don't know whether my family's going to be alright still. They threatened to take my family away from me. So, at that point, I'm doing what I can to protect my family. That's it. So all I know is that it was a roundabout. We could drive there now. I could show you. But roughly, I don't know Lenham, Maidstone area at all.
If we did it on Google, if we did it on Google Maps, like Google Earth, if we drove it, would you be able to do it?
I drove from Ashford to Maidstone.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
There's a roundabout that breaks up, I guess. So this is the first big roundabout you come to. And you would carry straight over to Maidstone, but instead I went round that roundabout and back up another road. And at that point, I was flashed and pulled over. You guys got out, opened my door, opened that door, pushed me out against the front of the car, took the girl, drove off. That's it. They said, we'll be in touch. So I'm here, I'm off work with stress because I'm here to protect my family. I want to be here 24/7 for my family. They come from my family. I've got nothing myself. I've got no choice.
All those turns and twists and roundabouts that the suspect has just described are metaphors, no less, for the story that he's telling. A twisted and distorted journey of pure fiction. And don't be fooled by his confident offer to show his colleagues to the place where he apparently handed Sarah over to the non-existent gang. His story doesn't have to be real for the place in question to be real, does it? He could have taken them to any old place, especially since the directions that he gave were just so unreliable. In any event, Couzens knows that the police wouldn't accept his offer to show them the place that he had just described. They wouldn't, for a start, be able to do any such thing before taking him to the police station and then processing him for custody and for further interrogation. At the time of his arrest, Couzens was, as he stated, signed off work with stress. But this stress wasn't caused by the threat of any gang. There were no threats, there was no gang, and the man admitted as much once he was in police custody. We know what, if anything, was stressing the man out.
I'll go back through the route with you in a minute, alright? But how do they contact you? How did you contact them?
I tried to fuck over one of their call girls and rip her off. So she's told them, and they've got me.
The suspect knows that that's not what the police meant. He's just buying himself more time to enjoy the comfort of his own front room. He knows that after this interview, he may well not get such home comforts again for many, many years.
So, how do they contact you? How is it they've been in contact with you to make these threats? They
just tell me, be here. So Hotel Burston down in Folkestone, got to be here. Okay, so I turned up. I've got no mobile number, and they have got my mobile number. They're obviously outside watching, following. Honestly.
How are they telling you to be there? would be that. How is it they're giving those directions?
Yeah, they'll come outside. So they'll be outside here.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, right, you're going to be in Folkestone at this time, or you're going to be in Ashford at this time. And that's it. There's no links, no telephone numbers. I'm completely on my own, but at the same time being threatened. It had Romanian plates on the van, white, like Mercedes Sprinter type van.
Why was this gang so invested in Couzens then, watching him and following him all the time? How much did the suspect owe them? However much it was, wouldn't they have got their money back several times over by just continuing to run their brothels and or any other areas of their sex trafficking activities and forgetting about Couzens if they weren't going to unalive him or at least give him a kicking? Coincidentally enough though, shortly before the three officers arrived, I think it was something like 40 minutes before their arrival, Couzens had done a factory reset on his phone, a process, as you know, that wipes every last bit of data from a phone. This, however, didn't help Couzens' story in the slightest. Dashcam footage, some of which you'll be seeing on screen right now, shows that Sarah Everard offered no physical resistance when, after Couzens showed her his warrant card and announced that he was arresting her for breaching COVID restrictions, he undid the handcuffs from his police belt and put them on her. Sarah was equally compliant when Couzens bundled her into the back of his police vehicle, a Vauxhall Crossland. Sarah didn't know, however, that the handcuffs that Couzens was using on her weren't police issue. They were from Amazon, Couzens having ordered them weeks before. Likewise, Sarah didn't know that she'd just been pushed into a car that Couzens had hired specifically for abduction purposes because his own car was, I understand, too tatty to look like a police vehicle. Living in Kent, Couzens had learned from his 3 visits to London, which he made weeks before the 3rd of March 2021, what sort of areas to go to in search of a woman walking alone at night where he wouldn't stand out. Sarah didn't know either that or the fact that the police belt that Couzens had used to hold his Amazon handcuffs was what he would subsequently use to strangle her to death after violating her. These 2 acts came after the drive of more than 2 hours that Couzens made from South London to Shepherdswell in the Dover district in Kent, with Sarah in the back of his hire car. Police believe that Couzens unalived Sarah sometime before 2:30 a.m. on March the 4th, 2021, since he was captured on camera at a service station at that time buying drinks. Less than 24 hours after Couzens' home visit from his police colleagues, Sarah's remains were found in an area of woodland that Couzens knew well because he owned it. On the 30th of September 2021, having since pleaded guilty to kidnapping, violating and unaliving Sarah, Couzens was given a whole life prison sentence. He will never be released. The third of Couzens' acts of indecent exposure, all of which he pleaded guilty to in February 2023, came no less than 4 days before he committed his horrific acts against Sarah Everard. In his first such offence, which he committed in November 2020, he included a vigorous act of masturbation.
The first of the offences in time involved A, who was cycling up a narrow country lane between Deal and Dover on the 13th of November 2020 at around 2:30 in the afternoon. Photographs of the lane in question show that it has a banked verge up one side with some woodland at the top. As A cycled up, a man stepped out from the trees. He was naked, energetically masturbating, his erect penis looking directly into A's eyes as he did so.
Taking into account these criminal offences of the man, which were reported before Sarah Everard's unaliving, but never properly investigated, and taking into account the man's long-standing money problems, he was telling the truth about those in his interrogation from his colleagues then, whose seriousness should have precluded him from becoming a police officer in the first place, we can see that Sarah Everard's unaliving was, arguably, 99.9% preventable. The man's addiction to violent pornography, his written warning for excessive use of force in an arrest, and so many other horrendous details to this man's background should be explored as well. My video exploring these details, which also presents the man's acts of the 3rd of March 2021 in much more detail, because there was just so much more to the man's devastating crimes against his victim, is either linked in the description box below or linked in the end screen, or if not, is coming soon. If this video has gripped you, I recommend you to watch this one next. I'll meet you there.